Hey guys. Tonight we're wandering through the misty corridors of the Middle Ages, where bedtime stories weren't exactly the kind you'd tell children. These were tales whispered beside dying hearths, when the plague had just passed, and the smell of smoke and candle wax filled the air. You might think your nightmares are bad, but trust me, after tonight, you'll be grateful for your modern mattress and electric light. You're about to walk through a time when people didn't just fear death, they danced with it, literally. Across Europe, murals known as the Danse Macabre, or the Dance of Death, painted skeletons waltzing hand in hand with kings and peasants alike. It wasn't morbid back then, it was a reminder. No matter your crown or your rags, everyone joins the same dance in the end. You sure you're ready for this? Because honestly, you wouldn't have lasted 10 minutes in medieval Europe without a bath or antibiotics. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The square before you is empty, save for the painted wall glowing under torchlight. The bone dance spirals across the stone, ribcages bowing, skulls grinning, skeletal hands pulling the living into a grotesque rhythm. You feel the faint vibration of drums, slow, like a heartbeat buried in the earth. It's hard to tell if you're hearing it or imagining it. A friar once wrote that after the Great Plague, people could almost hear the dead breathing in their sleep. Maybe that's why they painted these dances, to give form to something already lingering in the dark corners of their minds. Death wasn't the enemy, it was an old acquaintance. It came knocking so often, people learned to offer it a chair. You walk closer, the wall flickering orange from the torches. The figures seem to move slightly, chalk-white bones stretching, eyes hollow but amused. The artist had humor, in a grim kind of way. A bishop with a skeleton offering a chalice. A merchant with a bony hand reaching for his coin pouch. It's like satire, but with worms. They say the Dance of Death began in France, sometime in the 1420s, but spread like wildfire through monasteries, chapels, and graveyards. Some think it was a psychological bomb, an attempt to laugh at the inevitable. Others believe it was propaganda, a holy reminder to repent before the music stopped. Historians still argue over the first version, whether it began as a play, a mural, or simply a rumor that took on a life of its own. A faint wind drifts by, stirring your cloak. You imagine a painter centuries ago, mixing pigments by candlelight, crushed bones for white, soot for black, and the faint scent of vinegar in the air. Every brushstroke was a prayer and a warning. And somewhere between the pigment and plaster, the medieval world confessed its deepest secret. They were terrified of being forgotten. You trace a line along the mural, beneath the king's skeleton partner. A Latin inscription reads, "What you are, I once was. What I am, you shall be." Charming bedtime message, isn't it? Still, it's hard not to admire their honesty. No filters, no sugar-coating, just a cold reminder written in lime wash. Compared to that, your late-night doom-scrolling seems positively cheerful. Somewhere nearby, a bell tolls, deep, slow, 1, 2, 3. The sound rolls over the rooftops, blending with the hum of the night. You realize it's calling you forward. Because this isn't just a painting, it's an invitation. As you step back into the street, a pale mist curls around your ankles. There's a faint melody in the distance, a pipe, high and sweet, threading through the fog. It doesn't sound like music for the living. The sound grows clearer as you move through the narrow lanes of Hamelin, though the name, for now, means nothing to you. The mist thickens, catching on the corners of your cloak. Somewhere ahead, a tune lilts and bends, playful yet sharp, like laughter through clenched teeth. You follow it because curiosity is a powerful thing, more powerful, sometimes, than survival instinct. The story goes like this. Once upon a summer in 1284, this little German town faced a plague, not of people but of rats. They crawled through the streets, over bread, into beds. They ate the grain, spread disease, and made the town reek of something worse than despair. You can almost hear them now, a restless scratching beneath the cobblestones. And then came him, a man in a coat stitched with every color of a fever dream. The Pied Piper. No one quite remembered where he came from. One morning he was simply there, smiling faintly beneath a wide-brimmed hat, his flute gleaming like bone. He offered salvation for a price, rid the town of its rats. And he'd be paid in gold. The mayor agreed, and when the man lifted his pipe, the air itself seemed to tilt. You can picture it, thousands of rats rising from cellars and rivers, mesmerized, flowing after him like a living tide. He led them to the Weser River, where they plunged into the water and drowned. The miracle was complete, but when the piper returned for his reward, the town turned cold. Promises, it seems, were easier made than kept. So he left, empty-handed, silent, until the feast day of St. John and Paul. When he came back, dressed not in bright colors but in hunter's green. This time, when he played, no rats came out, only the children. You imagine standing there as the melody drifts past, the same lilting charm. But slower, sadder, one by one, the children rise from their games. Eyes vacant, smiles soft, 230 of them, walking out of Hamelin, through the gate, down the valley road. The townsfolk saw them vanish into a hollow hill, and they were never seen again. The records from Hamelin still exist. They even note the event in the town's chronicle, marked by a strange date, the day of the children's departure. But what does that mean? Historians still argue. Some say it was an allegory for the children's crusade, a generation led away to die in the East. Others believe it was recruitment or migration disguised as myth, and a few whisper that something darker walked those hills that day. You stop before a wall of half-timbered houses, each window glowing faintly yellow. Beneath one, carved into the stone, is an image, the piper leading a train of children. Their faces are too smooth, their smiles too wide. You shiver. The flute begins again, so faint now you could mistake it for the wind. A few notes hang in the air, trembling, before fading completely. Silence falls over the street, but you can't shake the sense that something has followed you out of that melody. Something patient. You glance over your shoulder, nothing. Just the moon, pale and sharp above the rooftops. And yet, somewhere far ahead, a faint green light flickers in the trees. That's where you're going next. The green glow ahead is faint, like the shimmer of water under moonlight. You walk toward it through the hush of night, past crooked hedges and the damp breath of the countryside. The tune from Hamelin has long faded, but its echo lingers in your chest, like the memory of a dream that doesn't want to leave. You arrive at a small clearing ringed by old oaks, their roots clutching the earth like gnarled hands. There's a hollow pit in the center, filled with soft light that seems to breathe. And then, you see them. Two children, a boy and a girl. Their faces pale, their eyes enormous, and their skin, green. Not a sickly green, but a muted shade, like the first shoots of spring or moss on stone. They're dressed in rough homespun clothes, too fine for peasants yet too plain for nobility. When they speak, their language is strange, neither Latin nor English, but something in between, melodic and low. You can't understand a word, but you can feel the fear behind it. The villagers of Woolpit didn't know what to make of them, either. This was in the time of King Henry II, around the middle of the 12th century. The children were found near a wolf pit, hence the town's name, Trembling. Dazed, their eyes blinking against the sun as if they'd never seen daylight before. The locals fed them, though they refused all food except raw beans. Eventually, the boy grew weak and died. The girl survived, learned English, and told her story. She said she and her brother came from a place without sunlight, where the sky was forever twilight and everything had a greenish glow. They were following the sound of church bells when they found themselves trapped in the blinding light of another world. It sounds absurd, yes, but remember, this was a time when the border between myth and life was just fog and superstition. Some scholars today say the green was caused by malnutrition, chlorosis, perhaps, or anemia from a diet poor in iron. Others propose the children were Flemish orphans, refugees of war who spoke a lost dialect. And yet, no record of such migration survives. The most imaginative claim they were travelers between worlds, slipping from one realm to another through some thin spot in the air. You crouch beside the glowing pit. It hums softly now, like a giant heart beneath the soil. A soft wind stirs your hair. You half expect a hand to reach out from that light, small and trembling, asking for beans. The girl of Woolpit, they say, grew into adulthood. She lost her green hue, worked as a servant, and even married. But she never stopped looking toward the woods at night, as if waiting for a sound, a bell, perhaps, to guide her home. You can almost see her now, standing at the window, candle in hand, her reflection pale and human, but her eyes, still carrying that faint mossy shimmer of somewhere else. And maybe that's what these stories are. Really, not warnings. Not miracles, but echoes from the corners of history where reason hasn't yet switched on the lights. The glow fades. You're left in darkness again. The hum sinking into silence. A branch cracks somewhere behind you. You turn. The air tastes metallic. There's movement in the mist, shapes darting between trees. Hooves without riders. The rush of unseen wings. The wild hunt is coming. The wind rises first, a low moan crawling across the moor, tugging at your cloak. Then comes the clatter, faint at first, like distant hooves on hollow ground. The sky above seems to bend, clouds swirling into a bruise-colored spiral. You feel that strange, electric tension just before a storm breaks, except this isn't a storm. It's older, colder, and far less forgiving. The Wild Hunt. You've heard whispers of it already. Drifting through the taverns and hearths of medieval Europe. A ghostly cavalcade, galloping through the night sky. Chasing souls, or perhaps collecting them. In some places, they were seen as omens of war or plague, in others. The dead themselves were said to ride, led by a spectral king with fire in his eyes. You crouch behind a stone wall as the sound grows, horns howling, dogs barking, hooves drumming in rhythm with your heart. And then you see them, pale riders flashing through the mist. Horses black as pitch, their eyes glowing with an unholy gold. Hounds follow, lean and red-eyed, tongues lolling as if they're tasting the living air for fear. You don't breathe, you don't move. In Germany, they called him Wotan, leading the furious host. In England, it was Herne the Hunter, the ghost of a royal gamekeeper said to haunt Windsor Forest. In Scandinavia, they spoke of Odin himself, storming through the winter sky. The stories varied, but the warning never did. If you see the hunt, you don't follow, and you don't look too long. It's easy to see why the peasants believed. In those centuries, thunder was the drumbeat of heaven, and lightning was the whip of angry gods. Imagine the terror of a December night, when the wind screamed through every crack in your hut and something unseen roared above the clouds. You'd swear the dead were galloping overhead. A monk's chronicle from the 11th century even describes a vast procession of ghostly hunters, crossing the sky over Normandy, men and women on horseback, clothed in rags, their cries like the dying. He claimed the earth trembled beneath them. Maybe he just didn't sleep enough. Maybe he saw something no one else dared to name. Historians still argue about where it all began. Was the hunt a memory of Old Norse myths, twisted by Christian fear, or a symbol of social unrest? A warning that the powerful would soon be hunted by the poor? Every culture gave it new meaning, new names, but the sound of it was always the same: hooves, horns, and the rush of wings. The wind whips your face as the hunt passes above. You can smell the sulfur and iron in the air. Like burnt rain, one of the riders glances down, just for a heartbeat, and your blood turns to ice. His face is bone white, hollow-eyed, but there's something disturbingly human behind that empty stare. He raises his horn. You drop flat against the mud as the sound bursts through the air, a long, echoing note that splits the night. The horses rear, the hounds howl, and then, just as suddenly, the storm is gone. Silence returns, so heavy it feels solid. Only your heartbeat keeps the world from collapsing. You rise slowly, your breath clouding the air. The moon peers through the thinning clouds, calm and innocent, as if nothing happened at all. Maybe nothing did. Maybe the wind simply played tricks on your exhausted mind. But then you notice hoof prints, deep ones, burned into the frozen ground, still smoking faintly at the edges. You trace them until they lead to a churchyard gate half off its hinges. Inside, the soil looks disturbed, the earth uneven, as if something had tried to claw its way out. And that's where the real trouble begins. The churchyard smells of damp stone and old iron. The fog has settled low, hugging the ground like a living thing. You step over the crooked gate, the hinges screeching loud enough to wake whatever's buried beneath. The graves here are old, some marked with crosses carved so crudely you wonder if the stonemason had ever seen one before. Others bear no names at all, only faint symbols worn smooth by centuries of weather. And yet, one mound looks freshly disturbed. You kneel beside it. The soil is loose, dark, and wet, as if someone, or something, has recently climbed out. A faint hum, almost a vibration, runs through the ground. You tell yourself it's just the wind. It's always the wind, until it isn't. In medieval England, long before vampires sparkled or had fan clubs, there were revenants, the restless dead. Not spirits, but actual corpses that clawed their way back to torment the living. Monks in Yorkshire and Northumbria recorded them in sober ink, describing how villagers would hear scratching beneath the floorboards, or see a pale, swollen figure wandering at night. These weren't translucent ghosts, they were flesh, bloated and stinking, wrapped in their own grave clothes. You brush dirt from a cracked headstone. The inscription is half gone, but you can make out the word infamous, the disgraced. That was the thing about revenants. They weren't heroes or saints, they were sinners, oath breakers, tax evaders, or just people the village couldn't stand even when they were alive. Death didn't stop them from being annoying. There's a story from the 12th century about a man from Anak, a notorious bully who died suddenly, only to return each night, pounding on doors and howling threats. People grew sick, livestock failed, milk curdled. Finally, a group of brave, or just very tired, villagers dug him up. They found the body fresh as the day he died, with blood trickling from his mouth. Naturally, they chopped off his head and burned him. Problem solved. Another tale from Melrose Abbey speaks of a monk who broke his vows and returned from the grave, terrorizing his former brothers. When they opened his tomb, the corpse was ruddy and inflated, as though filled with wine. They did what any reasonable monk would: decapitated him and sprinkled the remains with holy water. Sleep tight, everyone. Historians today debate what these accounts really meant. Some suggest natural decomposition explained the fresh corpses. Others think the stories served as moral lessons, early medieval crime and punishment. And there's the less comfortable theory: maybe it was about disease. In times of plague, when people didn't understand contagion, they blamed the dead. Better to stab a corpse than admit you didn't wash your hands. You rise and glance around the yard. The fog has thickened again, coiling between the tombs. A shape moves, a hunched silhouette. Slow, dragging one foot, then the other. You freeze. The figure lurches closer, face hidden beneath a hood. For a second, you swear you see eyes gleam beneath it, wet, red, and wrong. You step back, your heel catches on a root. The thing pauses, head tilting, as if listening. Then, it turns away, vanishing into the mist. The silence it leaves behind is worse than the sound. You can almost hear the heartbeat of the earth again, steady and deep. You exhale, forcing a laugh. Sure, you mutter, probably just a drunk monk. But when you glance at the ground, you notice something half buried in the soil: a child's wooden toy, carved like a baby's cradle. You pick it up, its wood damp and cold. Behind you, the church door creaks open on its own. Inside, faint firelight flickers. A woman's voice hums an old lullaby, soft and cracked, as if it's been echoing for hundreds of years. You step toward it, because of course you do, and the moment you cross the threshold, The song twists. It becomes a whisper, a prayer, a warning. You're about to learn why mothers in the Middle Ages feared what slept in their cradles. The door shuts softly behind you, and the chill of the churchyard fades into the heavy warmth of the chapel. The air smells of soot and candle wax, and that strange sweetness of old incense clinging to every wooden beam. A single flame trembles near the altar, and beside it, someone hums. It's a woman, wrapped in a shawl, bent over a cradle made of rough oak. Her voice drifts through the air, gentle, lulling, but with a rhythm too slow, too deliberate. You step closer, careful not to disturb the dust that coats the floor like frost. When she finally looks up, her eyes are hollow with exhaustion. "He isn't mine," she says quietly, and you realize the bundle in the cradle isn't sleeping, it's staring back. The changeling. In medieval Europe, it was one of the cruelest fears a mother could have, that her baby wasn't her baby at all. That one night, when she blinked too long or stepped outside to fetch water, fairies, or worse, demons, had stolen the real child and left behind a copy. The changeling looked the same, but it didn't laugh, didn't grow, didn't cry like other children. It just watched. You lean closer to the cradle. The child's skin has a waxy pallor. Its limbs twitch in odd, jerky movements, and the eyes, those eyes are far too knowing. Peasant folklore is full of desperate rituals to test the truth. In Ireland, they'd heat iron tongs red hot and wave them over the crib to see if the thing flinched. In Scotland, they'd place the baby on a shovel and hold it over a fire. In Germany, they might leave the child on a dung heap overnight, praying the fairies would take pity and return the real one. It's horrifying, yes, but so is losing a child in an age with no medicine, no understanding of illness, and no comfort except faith. Historians still debate what these stories really were. Some believe they were tragic explanations for developmental disorders, autism, dwarfism, or physical deformities misunderstood in an unforgiving age. Others think they masked acts of neglect or infanticide, wrapped in superstition to ease guilt. But for the parents who lived those nights, the fear was real. The woman before you begins to rock the cradle harder, her voice trembling. "He looks at me," she whispers, as if he remembers something I don't. You glance down again. The creature smiles, a tiny, sharp smile, and then lets out a sound that isn't quite a laugh. It's too deep, too old. The candle beside the cradle flickers and goes out. You step back instinctively. The chapel darkens, and in the silence, the lullaby twists into something else, a chant, almost a taunt. Somewhere, you recall a saying from an old monk's letter. They claim to test the soul of a babe. Yet it is their own souls that tremble. You strike a match, its tiny flame hissing to life. The cradle is empty. Only the shawl remains, crumpled like shed skin. A cold draft curls through the church, smelling faintly of peat and moss, as if the forest itself has crept indoors. You hear faint giggling near the doorway, echoing softly down the nave. You follow it out into the night, where the mist glows faintly blue. The moor stretches ahead, and from the marshes comes the shimmer of distant lights, small, flickering, beckoning. They look almost friendly. Almost. At first, the lights seem harmless, tiny blue flames dancing low above the marsh. They bob and sway, drifting just far enough to stay out of reach. You tell yourself there's nothing to worry about. Probably swamp gas, maybe fireflies. Except this is the Middle Ages, and there are no words for methane combustion. Only whispers. You step closer, boots sinking into the soft earth. The air grows heavy, thick with the smell of rot and salt. Every flicker of light seems to pull you forward. Deeper into the bog. They call them will-o'-the-wisps here, ignis fatuus. The foolish fire. You've heard the stories. Travelers lose their way at night, chasing these flickers through the fog until dawn finds their hats floating in the reeds. Peasants swear the lights are spirits, souls of the unbaptized, wandering between heaven and hell. Miners say they're the ghosts of men who dug too deep, trapped forever beneath the marsh. You pause. One flame hovers closer now. Pale and steady, its glow ripples over the water like breath on glass. For a heartbeat, it almost looks like a face, soft, sad, familiar. You blink, and it's gone. A medieval pilgrim once wrote about following such lights through the fens of East Anglia. He thought they were lanterns held by kind strangers. He never found the strangers. His bones were discovered weeks later, sunken deep in the mud, still pointing toward the horizon. You smile nervously to yourself. At least he got some exercise. The truth, of course, is far less romantic, or so modern scholars claim. They say the phenomenon is caused by decaying organic matter releasing phosphine and methane, which ignite on contact with oxygen, little puffs of spontaneous flame. Perfectly natural, perfectly explainable, and yet, no one's ever truly comfortable standing this close to one. Because deep down, the human brain doesn't care about chemistry. It cares about survival, and your instincts are whispering, don't follow the light. Still, curiosity wins. You reach out a hand toward the nearest flicker. The air turns colder. The flame darts back, teasing, playful as a child. Then another appears, and another, weaving together like a necklace of stars. Before you realize it, you're several paces from solid ground. The mud shifts under your feet with a soft, sucking sound. Classic medieval move. You mutter, ignore every warning and walk straight into danger. The lights begin to circle you now. Faster, brighter, until your shadow twists across the reeds. You could almost swear they're laughing, a high, tinkling sound that dances with the wind. Then one breaks away, racing ahead through the fog. You follow. The ground gives way beneath you. Your leg sinks knee-deep into the bog. The water icy and thick. You struggle free, gasping, drenched. When you look up, the lights are gone. Only darkness remains. Somewhere nearby, something splashes, deliberate, heavy. You freeze. The marsh is silent again. Too silent. In the distance, church bells ring, faint, mournful. You turn toward the sound, trudging through the muck until your boots find gravel again. A dirt path winds upward toward a small clearing. There, in the torchlight, you see a crowd kneeling, not before a man, but before a stone carving of a dog. The figure's muzzle is chipped, its paws outstretched in benediction. Offerings of bread and ribbons lie at its feet. Mothers murmur prayers. Children clutch at their skirts. You've stumbled into the grove of St. Geinfert, the only saint in Christendom who just so happened to be a dog. The crowd kneels in the half-light, their breaths misting in the chill air. You blink, trying to be sure of what you're seeing. Yes, there's no mistake. The saint before you is a greyhound, stone-carved, weathered, and noble, with an expression halfway between serenity and warning. Someone has hung a rosary around its neck. A crude halo, made of rushes, rests above its head. At first glance, it feels absurd, holy reverence directed toward a dog. But this is the 13th century. In an age when miracles and madness often shared a bed, it made perfect sense. The story of Saint Geinfert begins, as all the best legends do, with a terrible misunderstanding. A noble knight once owned a faithful greyhound named Geinfert, who guarded his infant son while he was away. One day, returning home, the knight found the nursery in chaos, cradle overturned, blood on the dog's muzzle, and the child nowhere to be seen. In a rage, he drew his sword and struck the animal dead. Moments later, a cry came from beneath the cradle, the child, alive, unharmed, and beside him lay the body of a slain serpent. The knight had killed his most loyal protector. Grief-stricken, he buried Geinfert in a grove near the Rhone and planted trees around the grave. But word of the faithful hound spread. Soon, peasants came to pray there, claiming miracles, especially for sick children. They left offerings, lit candles, and asked the holy dog for healing. Of course, the church wasn't thrilled. When inquisitors arrived around 1260, they declared the cult heretical. Superstitious folly, they called it. They burned the grove, exhumed the dog's bones, and forbade the prayers. But somehow, the worship never stopped. You watch as a woman dips her fingers into a bowl of water at the base of the statue. Then touches her baby's forehead. The child coughs softly, then settles. The mother whispers, "Merci, Saint Geinfert," her voice trembling with hope. It's touching, and deeply unsettling. A friar named Etienne de Bourbon once wrote about visiting this very grove. He described mothers performing bizarre rituals, dipping infants into the river, tying them to poles overnight, or laying them among candles to test their purity. He condemned it all as devilish paganism masquerading as faith. Yet modern historians read between his furious lines and see something else, a desperate form of folk medicine. In a world with no doctors, faith was the only cure. You crouch beside the offerings, bread, ribbons, a few coins, a doll carved from birch wood. Someone has left a collar made of blue wool. You can almost imagine the sound of paws padding softly behind you. The rustle of leaves as a spectral hound circles its resting place. And maybe, just maybe, faith and love sometimes refused to die, even when the church said they must. You glance around. The crowd has begun to disperse. The moon hangs low over the Rhone Valley, its reflection quivering on the water. The torchlight fades, replaced by the silver glow of night. You take one last look at the statue. Its stone eyes seem almost alive, watchful, protective. Then a whisper drifts through the trees. Not all monsters wear scales. You turn sharply, but no one's there, only the sound of the river. And then, faintly, you hear another kind of whisper, the gentle splash of bathwater. The sigh of a door closing, the rustle of silk. Somewhere ahead, beyond the grove, lies the castle of Lusignan, and inside, a woman who hides her secret every Saturday. Her name is Melusine, and she's not entirely human. The castle of Lusignan rises from the mist like a half-remembered dream. Its towers lean at odd angles, silvered by moonlight, as though reality itself can't quite decide if it should keep the place standing. The sound of running water drifts from somewhere inside. You climb the worn steps, your hand brushing the cool stone of the balustrade, and pause before an arched doorway glowing faintly with candlelight. A voice hums behind it, a woman's voice, low and tender, echoing through the marble halls. You push the door open a crack and see her, Melusine, the lady of the castle. Bathing by candlelight, steam curls around her shoulders, and the water glimmers like liquid amber. For a moment, everything is calm, ordinary, until she shifts. And then you see it. Her lower body isn't human. From the waist down, she's scaled like a serpent, her tail coiling languidly beneath the water, glinting with pale green light. The song falters. Her head turns, sharp, almost too fast. You step back, heart pounding, but the door doesn't creak. And the hum resumes, softer now, as if she's pretending not to know you're there. Legend says Melusine was no ordinary woman, but a fae, born of a mortal father and a fairy mother. She vowed to live as a perfect wife to a human man, Raymondin, under one condition: he must never see her on Saturdays. That was her private day, her sacred time. But curiosity, as you've probably noticed by now, was the Middle Ages' favorite sin. One fateful Saturday, driven by whispers and doubt, Raymondin spied on her and found exactly what you've just seen. Half woman, half serpent. When she discovered his betrayal, her cries shattered the castle's windows. She transformed fully into a dragon and vanished into the sky, leaving behind her husband, her children, and a legend that clung to the family for centuries. Some say she still returned, circling the towers of Lusignan before each generation's downfall. When the castle's bells tolled unexpectedly, people whispered, "Melusine is mourning." You wander deeper into the chamber, the scent of rosewater and damp stone thick in the air. Her silver comb lies by the bath. You pick it up, tracing its ornate design, tiny carved serpents entwined in a circle. Was Melusine a monster, or simply a woman punished for privacy? Historians still debate. Some see her as a remnant of ancient water deities, reshaped by Christian morality into a cautionary tale. Others read her story as a metaphor for marriage itself, love tested by mistrust, devotion undone by curiosity. Outside, thunder murmurs. You look toward the balcony, where the wind whips the curtains. For a second, you could swear you see a figure, long hair streaming, wings unfurled, tail glinting in the moonlight. You whisper, half to yourself, "You deserved better." The air trembles, and from far off, a single bell rings, not the bell of warning, but the deep toll of mourning. When it fades, another sound rises in its place, the rhythmic chant of men. Low and solemn, you follow it down a spiral staircase to the courtyard below, where torches burn around a stake, and the smell of smoke and iron fills your lungs. The chanting stops. A hooded man steps forward, clutching a wooden cross. His voice is steady, almost cruel in its calm. "Jacques de Molay," he says, "Grand Master of the Temple. Do you have any final words?" The prisoner lifts his head, eyes blazing. The firelight dances on his broken armor. And when he speaks, his curse echoes across centuries. The flames hiss, spitting embers into the dark like angry fireflies. You stand at the edge of the crowd on that cold March evening in 1314. The chill of the Seine cutting through the smoke. The man at the stake is bound but unbowed. His white mantle, once embroidered with a red cross, is now stained with soot and blood. Jacques de Molay, last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, is about to die, and he knows it. You can almost feel the tension rolling off the people gathered around, merchants, priests, beggars, even soldiers. Everyone has come to watch the end of an age. Once, the Templars had been heroes, warriors of the Holy Land, guardians of relics, bankers of kings. But now, under the orders of King Philip IV of France, they're condemned as heretics, accused of worshipping idols, spitting on the cross, and consorting with demons. Funny how accusations of heresy always show up when someone powerful owes you money. As the executioner adjusts the ropes, de Molay raises his voice, steady, clear, defiant. God knows who is wrong and who has sinned. Soon, a great calamity shall befall those who have condemned us falsely. His eyes find the king's emissary across the square. Before this year is out, both you and the Pope shall stand before God's judgment. People whisper, even the guards hesitate. You've heard the story, of course, how the Pope, Clement V, died just weeks later, and Philip himself followed within the year. Coincidence? Or curse? Historians still argue, scribbling over the same parchment with opposite conclusions. Some say it was pure chance. Others insist de Molay's dying words carried something darker than prophecy. The torch touches the kindling. The flames surge upward with a roar, devouring wood, rope, flesh. Smoke spirals into the twilight like incense from a monstrous altar. You can smell the tallow, hear the popping of sap, and above it all, de Molay's voice, chanting something low, rhythmic, unbroken even as the fire takes him. There's a reason this moment burned itself into history. It wasn't just a man dying, it was a secret dying with him. The Templars had vaults beneath Paris, ships unaccounted for, treasures never found. People still wonder what they carried away before their arrest: gold, relics, or something far stranger. A sudden gust of wind whips the flames sideways, forcing you back. The sky flashes, lightning without thunder. For a heartbeat, the figure in the fire looks almost translucent, the heat twisting it into strange shapes. You blink, and he's gone, leaving only ash and the faint smell of ozone. The crowd disperses slowly, muttering prayers that sound more like gossip. You linger, staring at the blackened stake. The river murmurs nearby, indifferent. Then, something odd. Beneath the charred wood, a mark has appeared on the stone. It's faint, half melted, but unmistakable. A circle divided by a cross, surrounded by runes you don't recognize. You touch it, and for an instant, warmth pulses through your fingertips, like a heartbeat, steady and ancient. The curse, perhaps, didn't die at all. It simply changed form. Far to the north, where the fjords cut through dark cliffs and sea mist, stories are already spreading of another kind of revenant, one that guards treasure. Not faith, a thing that refuses to rest. And if you listen closely, beneath the howl of the wind, You can almost hear the sea whispering its name. Draugr. The sea has its own kind of darkness, thicker, heavier, almost alive. It presses against your ears and steals your sense of direction. Somewhere ahead, waves crash against jagged rock, the sound echoing through the fog like a slow heartbeat. You pull your cloak tighter as you follow the narrow path down to the water's edge. A storm is gathering. The wind tastes of salt and iron. From the cliffs, you can see faint lights flickering across the fjord, lanterns on longboats, bobbing like distant stars. The Norsemen once said these were Draugr, the undead sailors of the north, still guarding their plunder long after their flesh had rotted away. You've met ghosts before tonight, but the Draugr is something else entirely. It's not a spirit that haunts the living, it's a body that refuses to die. Swollen with seawater, bloated and blue, it walks from its burial mound at night, dragging the stench of salt and decay. Some say it crushes men in their sleep. Others say it sits astride the chests of fishermen, pressing the breath out of them like wringing water from cloth. You spot a mound ahead, half buried in moss and heather. The stones marking its boundary glisten with frost. A single raven perches atop it, black feathers gleaming. You approach carefully. The air here feels heavy, as if it's waiting for something. A saga once told of Kar the Old, a warrior buried with his ship. The locals said his Draugr walked the shore each winter, defending his treasure from thieves. One unlucky man tried to dig into the mound, thinking the story mere superstition. He was found the next morning, his limbs twisted, his skin blue, his eyes wide and full of seawater. Historians debate what the Draugr really represents. Some call it a metaphor for greed, the curse of those who cling too tightly to their wealth. Others see in it the remnants of pre-Christian belief, a soul divided between the grave and the sea, restless until properly honored. And of course, there are those who claim these stories were just warnings. Folk psychology to stop would-be grave robbers. You crouch beside the mound and run your hand over the cold earth. The ground seems to shift, subtly, like something beneath it is breathing. You tell yourself it's imagination. It isn't. A faint sound rises, wet fabric, dragging over stone. The raven takes flight with a harsh cry. You freeze. From the edge of the mound, a hand pushes through the soil, bloated, mottled, streaked with algae. Another follows. Then, slowly, a face emerges, pale, swollen, eyes like dull pearls. The Draugr pulls itself upright, its armor crusted with barnacles, beard dripping with seawater. It stands taller than you expect, almost regal. Despite the rot, around its neck hangs a rusted torque of gold, gleaming faintly even in the dark. For a long moment, neither of you moves. Then, in a voice like stones grinding beneath the tide, it speaks. "Why do you wake me?" You swallow hard. "I was just passing through." The Draugr tilts its head. "So said the last one." It steps forward, and you catch a whiff of decay so thick it burns your throat. But something about its eyes stops you from running. There's sorrow there. Fury, yes, but also sorrow. Deep and ancient. "I kept what was mine," it says. "They called it greed. I called it memory." You realize, suddenly, that the treasure it guards isn't gold. It's the past itself, stories, oaths, glories turned to rust and foam. The Draugr isn't just a corpse, it's history refusing to stay buried. The wind rises. The creature turns toward the sea, as if answering a call only it can hear. It takes one step, then another, into the black water. The waves swallow it whole. You stand there until the tide reaches your boots. Until the last ripple fades. Only the torque remains on the sand, half buried. You bend to pick it up, but the distant sound of hooves freezes you in place. This time, not from the wild hunt. Something else rides tonight, headless and laughing through the mist. A new terror from across the sea, the Dullahan has arrived. You hear it before you see it, a rhythmic pounding that echoes through the fog like a heartbeat made of thunder. Hooves, striking wet ground in a gallop that never falters. Then, the sound of metal, chains rattling, reins snapping, and a faint laugh that doesn't sound human. The mist parts just enough for you to see the glow of two burning eyes. And then he appears. The Dullahan. He rides a massive black horse slick with rain, steam curling from its nostrils. In one hand, he holds a whip made of a human spine, in the other. He carries his own head. It's large, mottled with decay, the flesh yellowed like old parchment, and the grin carved wide enough to look eternal. The eyes roll wildly, scanning left and right, as if they can see in every direction at once. You freeze where you stand on the path. The horse snorts, stamping, sparks flashing beneath its hooves. The rider lifts his head high, holding it up like a lantern, and suddenly, the world around you brightens with an eerie green light. The tales say that when the Dullahan rides, someone nearby is about to die. No wall, no lock, no prayer can keep him out. If he stops at your door, he calls your name, and the next morning your body is found, eyes open, face pale, heart silent. But if you watch him ride and he catches your gaze, he might fling a basin of blood in your direction. That's the warning. The next visit won't be a warning. You take a step back. The ground behind you squelches, soft with mud and fear. The rider halts, turning his severed head toward you. The grin widens, the mouth moves, but the voice doesn't come from it. It comes from everywhere at once. Traveler, it whispers, you walk too far into old stories. You open your mouth to speak, but no sound comes. The head's eyes narrow, and for a heartbeat, you see your own reflection in them, small, trembling, alive. Then the Dullahan throws back his head and laughs, a wet, hollow sound that makes the horse rear. He lashes the air with the spine whip, and with a thunderous snort, the beast charges past you. Mud splatters your face. The green light flares, then vanishes. When you dare to look again, he's gone. Only the faint smell of earth and blood lingers. You stand there for a long time, waiting for your heart to calm down. But the world feels thinner now, more fragile. Every shadow seems alive. Every sound feels like a footstep. And yet, curiosity wins again. You follow the road he took, tracing the hoofprints until they lead to a small monastery perched on the edge of a cliff. Its walls are cracked, its gate sagging, but candlelight flickers in one window. You step inside. The corridor smells of sulfur and ink. The monks here look tired, pale, their robes stiff with dust. On a table near the altar lies something covered in cloth. One of them lifts the corner to reveal an egg. You stare at it, confused, until you realize what they're whispering about. It's no ordinary egg, it's been laid by a rooster. Found in the corner of the cloister. Warm and pulsing faintly. They believe it will hatch soon. And when it does, they say, it will bring death. They call it the cockatrice. The air inside the monastery feels dense, thick with candle smoke and something else. Something sharp and sour, like vinegar. The monks crowd around the table, whispering prayers in nervous Latin. Their voices tremble as they stare at the egg. It's small, speckled, unremarkable, except that it shouldn't exist. A rooster laid it. You watch as the eldest monk crosses himself. His lips pale. We must bury it, he says, before the devil finds his way out. Another shakes his head. No, it must be destroyed before it hatches. The legends vary, but all agree on one thing. The cockatrice is a mistake the world wasn't meant to make. Born when a rooster lays an egg and a toad, or in some tales, a serpent, broods it under the warmth of its foul belly. The result is a creature both absurd and deadly. Half serpent, half chicken, all doom. You step closer. The egg vibrates faintly. The monks flinch. One backs away, muttering about Saint Hildegard's warning, how such creatures were signs of impurity. Nature itself rebelling. Another insists it's an omen of plague. A third suggests it's simply a deformity. The kind of thing that happens when the farm's gone to ruin and the hens are confused. Historians, centuries later, will have their own theories. Some say the cockatrice myth was medieval biology's attempt to make sense of fossils or strange lizards pulled from mines. Others believe it symbolized fear of contagion, especially when outbreaks of pestilence swept through cloisters. Killing silently, invisibly, as if with a single glance. But right now, no one here is thinking metaphorically. The abbot gestures to you. Stranger, he says, you came from the road. Have you seen omens tonight? You hesitate. A headless rider. You admit. And something walking out of the sea. The monks go still. One crosses himself 3 times. Then it's true. Another whispers. The world is thinning. The egg rattles again, harder this time. A hairline crack appears along its shell. A sound like air escaping. Faint but unmistakable. You take a step back. From within comes a hiss. The eldest monk lifts a crucifix. Back, he cries. But his voice breaks. The shell splits. A shape unfurls, small at first. Then rising, stretching, wings, scales, feathers. Its eyes open, yellow as sulfur. For a second, it's almost ridiculous. A chicken with a snake's tail and the attitude of a god. Then it turns its gaze toward the nearest monk. He freezes. His skin pales, cracks, and then, nothing, just a heap of cloth and dust. You stumble backward, heart racing. The creature blinks slowly, then lets out a shriek that shakes the glass in the chapel windows. The air smells of burning. Another monk collapses. Someone screams, "Cockatrice," before the sound cuts off abruptly. You reach for the door. Behind you, the abbot grabs a polished mirror from the wall and holds it high. Look into your own eyes. Beast, he shouts. The creature rears, its reflection flashing in the glass. The scream that follows is deafening, full of rage and terror. The cockatrice twists, thrashes, then collapses into a heap of feathers and smoke. Silence. The abbot drops the mirror, shattering it. God forgive us, he murmurs. It never should have been born. You look down at the pile of ash. The shape of the creature's wings is still faintly visible, curling like burnt parchment. Outside, thunder rolls again, closer this time. Rain lashes against the stone walls. And through the broken window, you see the Rhone River gleaming far below. For a moment, you think you see something moving in the water, huge, lumbering, scaled. The monks gather at the window, pale faces lit by lightning. The Tarasque, one breathes. It comes again. And you realize you're not done with monsters yet. The Rhone glimmers under the moonlight, wide and restless, its surface broken by the slow ripple of something massive moving just beneath. The storm has passed, but the air is still thick with heat and the faint tang of smoke. You stand on the edge of the town of Tarascon, where stories cling to the riverbank like moss, one in particular, told and retold since the 13th century, about a creature that was half myth, half nightmare. The Tarasque. Locals describe it as part dragon, part lion, part turtle, its shell impenetrable, its claws sharp enough to tear oak, its breath hot enough to turn the Rhone to steam. They say it lived in a cave upriver, descending at dusk to devour travelers and livestock. Its roar was so loud it cracked the monastery bells. The villagers tried fire, spears, even prayer, but nothing could stop it. Nothing, that is, until a saint came walking down the road. You can almost see her now, Saint Martha, sister of Lazarus, the one Jesus raised from the dead. According to the legend, she carried only a cross and a vial of holy water. When the Tarasque lunged, she stood calm as a sunrise, sprinkled the water, and sang. The beast stopped mid-roar, lowered its head, and let her slip a ribbon around its neck. She led it, docile, back to the town. And because humanity is humanity, the townspeople promptly panicked and stoned it to death. The moral was supposed to be redemption through faith. But when you stand here by the Rhone, listening to the faint gurgle of the water, you can't help thinking, maybe the Tarasque wasn't the monster in that story. The festival they hold every summer still reenacts the scene. You'd recognize it instantly. Villagers parading a huge wooden dragon through the streets, its shell painted green and gold. Children shouting, "Vive la Tarasque," as drummers march behind. The church once tried to ban it, calling it pagan, but people kept the ritual alive anyway. It's easier to celebrate your fears than to erase them. A modern scholar once wrote that the Tarasque was born of memory and geography. The Rhone flooded often, destroying crops and homes. The monster may have been their way of explaining what they couldn't control. Water as wrath, water as judgment. You crouch beside the river, letting your fingers trail the current. It's warm, almost unnaturally so. When you pull your hand back, your palm glistens faintly green. The moonlight ripples across the water's surface, forming the suggestion of scales. A single bubble breaks near the far bank, then another. You hold your breath. Something stirs below, vast and slow. The reeds sway though the wind has stopped. A shape breaches, a shell, a ridge. It vanishes again before you can be sure. But the water keeps moving long after it should have gone still. Old things never die, you whisper. Behind you, the bells of Tarascon toll midnight. The sound rolls down the valley, swallowed by the night. When it fades, another chime rises in its place, softer, more musical, not a warning this time, but a prayer. You follow the sound up the hill toward a small chapel, its doorway blackened with smoke from 1,000 candles. Inside, the air hums with warmth and reverence. At the altar stands a statue of the Black Madonna, her eyes serene, her face soot dark yet luminous. People kneel before her, murmuring for mercy, for rain, for healing, and as the candlelight flickers over her face, it's hard to tell whether she's carved from stone or something much older still. The chapel is small, the kind that smells of wax, smoke, and centuries. Every surface gleams with a thin coat of soot. You can feel it in the air, the quiet pulse of faith pressed into stone. Before you stands the Black Madonna, her gaze calm and unblinking, her skin, dark and glistening under the candlelight, seems to drink in the flame rather than reflect it. You've seen plenty of Madonnas in medieval art, pale, gilded, soft-faced, but this one is different. There's something ancient about her, something that feels older than the church itself. Her child rests in her arms, just as in every other statue. But his expression is grave, almost knowing. You can't shake the feeling that you've stepped into a secret, the kind whispered from mother to mother long after midnight. A woman kneeling nearby crosses herself and whispers. She sees us in the dark, when no one else does. The Black Madonnas appeared all over Europe, France, Poland, Spain, even deep in the Alps. Scholars and priests have argued for centuries about why. Some claim it's just soot, centuries of candles staining pale marble until it turned brown. Others insist the color was intentional, meant to represent humility or the universal embrace of divinity. And then there are the whispers, that she's no mere variant of the Virgin Mary at all, but the echo of older goddesses reborn in Christian disguise. The worshippers didn't care about the arguments. To them, she was hope. When the crops failed, they prayed to her. When plague came, they carried her statue through the streets. When babies wouldn't survive the winter, mothers lit candles in her name. And sometimes, just sometimes, their prayers worked. You watch as a farmer presses a small loaf of bread against the statue's base, murmuring his thanks for a harvest that almost didn't happen. A child follows, offering a wilted flower. Faith here isn't grand, it's human, fragile, trembling. A monk approaches quietly. His robe is streaked with ash, his eyes tired. She's the color of the earth, he says softly, the same soil that takes us when we die, and feeds what grows after. That's why we love her. He turns away before you can ask his name. Historians today still can't agree. Was she dark because of smoke? Because of symbolism? Because she carried within her the memory of the Mediterranean goddesses, Cybele, Isis, Artemis of Ephesus, who once held the same pose, the same gaze? Faith, one medieval chronicler wrote, has many faces, but they all look upward. You take a step closer. The air near the statue hums faintly, like the moment before a storm. Her carved eyes seem to follow you, not in menace, but in a kind of sad understanding. You can almost imagine her whispering, "I've seen worse nights than yours." Outside, thunder rolls again, but softer now, like a heartbeat behind the hills. The candles flutter, the scent of smoke thickens, and for an instant, the shadows seem to move. Shapes, human, but indistinct, drift along the walls. circling the statue like pilgrims of smoke. You blink, and they're gone. When you step outside, the air feels cleaner, fresher, the storm breaking at last. But the world hasn't gone quiet. From somewhere beyond the forest, drums beat, low, rhythmic, urgent. You follow the sound through the trees, where torches flare and shadows dance. There, in a clearing, men and women lie in trance. Their bodies still but their spirits elsewhere. Their leader raises a staff to the stars and cries out words you don't understand. The wind trembles. The Benendanti are riding tonight. Those strange, good walkers of Friuli who claim to leave their bodies and battle witches in defense of the harvest. And if what you've seen so far has been unsettling, what's happening here might just be the strangest miracle, or delusion, of them all. The clearing smells of damp grass and smoke. Torches flicker in a rough circle, their light throwing long shadows over faces half hidden by hoods and masks. The air vibrates with the hum of drums, not loud, but steady, like a heartbeat shared by everyone here. You crouch behind a fallen log, watching. The people in the circle lie on their backs, eyes closed, their lips moving in silent rhythm. The leader, a man in a rough wool coat tied with a cord, raises a bundle of herbs and begins to chant. The smoke from the burning leaves curls through the night air, sweet and strange, and you suddenly feel light-headed, as if your thoughts are slipping sideways. This is Friuli, late 16th century, where the church's reach stretches long, but not quite long enough to smother old beliefs. These people call themselves the Benendanti, the good walkers. They claim that on certain nights of the year, their souls leave their bodies to fight witches in spirit form, to protect the fertility of the fields. They see themselves not as sorcerers, but as defenders of the community. You watch as the leader's head tilts back. His breathing slows until it seems to stop. Around him, the others begin to tremble. Their limbs twitch. Their lips murmur half-formed words. It's as if their bodies are emptying out, their spirits peeling free. The drums grow faster. The torches flare. Then everything goes still. You can't explain it, but for an instant, the air shivers. You sense movement all around you. Shapes gliding through the trees. Pale and swift, like smoke given thought. One of them passes close, so close you can feel the chill, and for a heartbeat you see a face, peaceful, determined, shining faintly gold. The Benendanti are gone, riding invisibly through the night to battle their unseen foes. The chronicles of inquisitors tell a different story. They called these people dreamers, liars, heretics. During the witch trials of the 1500s, many Benendanti were dragged before the courts and accused of sorcery. But their testimonies were strangely consistent. They claimed to fight witches using fennel stalks while the witches wielded sorghum. They said their battles decided whether crops would flourish or fail. They spoke of their calling as a divine gift, one that came by birth, marked by a call over their faces when they entered the world. Some historians think these were echoes of shamanic traditions, fragments of pre-Christian belief surviving under new names. Others see it as a kind of communal dream, a shared mythology born from famine and fear. But even under interrogation, the Benendanti refused to call themselves witches. "We serve God," they said. "We fight for the light." The drums resume, faint now, as if returning from far away. The bodies in the clearing begin to stir. One by one, their eyes flutter open. They look around as though waking from a deep sleep. A woman wipes tears from her face and whispers, "The harvest will be safe." The leader exhales, trembling, and lowers his bundle of herbs. The torches burn low. No one speaks. You stand slowly, your legs numb, and turn to leave, but as you reach the edge of the clearing, you notice something glinting in the dirt, a silver coin stamped with a cross. You pick it up. It's cold, impossibly cold. The surface is scratched with strange marks that almost look like hoof prints. A memory surfaces. A story of a bridge in the mountains, built by desperate hands and sealed with a bargain. The wind carries a faint bleating sound, soft and mournful. Somewhere ahead, a stone arch spans a deep ravine. The villagers call it the Devil's Bridge, and the toll for crossing it was unusual. The road twists upward through the mountains. The air sharp and thin. Moonlight spills across gray stone and icy streams, painting everything in a ghostly sheen. You can hear the river far below, rushing like endless applause. Then the path turns, and there it is, the Devil's Bridge. It arches high and impossibly narrow over the gorge, built from stones so precisely fitted they could have been set by a sculptor's hand. No mortar, no markings, just cold perfection, the kind of craftsmanship that makes you wonder who, or what, helped build it. The villagers tell you it was impossible. No human hands could have raised such a structure in a single night. But desperation has always been the mother of dark bargains. So when the floods destroyed the old bridge and took half the town's cattle, they did what people do when fear outpaces faith. They prayed to something that would actually answer. The devil heard. He offered a deal. He'd build them a bridge that would stand forever, strong as sin itself. In return, he wanted the soul of the first creature to cross it. The villagers agreed, because people always think they can outsmart the devil. When dawn broke, the bridge was there, flawless and gleaming. The villagers gathered, staring in awe and terror. The devil appeared, grinning from the far side, his hooves sinking into the mist. "Send me my payment," he said. That's when they pushed a goat onto the bridge. The creature trotted nervously forward, reached the midpoint, and, well, there are varying versions. In some, the devil was furious and vanished in smoke, leaving only the smell of brimstone. In others, he took the goat's soul anyway, muttering, "A deal's a deal. You walk across now, your boots ringing softly on the stone. The drop below is dizzying, hundreds of feet down to the roaring water. The air tastes of iron. Midway, you stop and place a hand on the railing. The rock is warm. That shouldn't be possible." A faint voice drifts up from the river below, murmuring in a language older than Latin. It sounds amused. There are dozens of bridges like this scattered across Europe, each with its own legend. Switzerland, Italy, Wales, Germany, always the same pattern. A miracle built overnight, a trick played on the devil, and a reminder that human cunning can outmatch damnation. Except sometimes the toll wasn't paid by a goat. Sometimes, the stories say, a person crossed too soon, by accident, or fate, and the devil got what he came for. Historians argue these tales were metaphors, moral architecture stories meant to warn builders against pride. But standing here, with the wind howling through the gorge. It doesn't feel like metaphor. It feels alive. You look down through the cracks between the stones. Something moves in the shadows below, a reflection that doesn't match yours. Two red pinpricks blink up at you. Distant but aware. You whisper, "You lost the bet. Go home." The lights wink out. The air cools. You hurry to the far side, heart hammering, until your boots hit solid ground again. Behind you, the bridge hums faintly, like a chord struck once and still vibrating centuries later. The road beyond leads into open countryside, lined with dried trees and the faint shimmer of torchlight in the distance. The air smells of sweat and iron. As you walk closer, you see them, rows of men and women moving as one. Bare-backed, chanting, their whips rising and falling in rhythm. The flagellants are marching, beating their sins into the night, begging heaven to notice. And their prayers, you'll soon learn, are as contagious as their wounds. The sound reaches you first, thwack, 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 a wet rhythm of leather striking flesh. Then comes the chanting, low, hoarse voices repeating, Miserere me, Deus, over and over. The words rising like smoke into the freezing air. You step out from behind the trees and see them, a procession of men. Bare from the waist up, their backs slick with blood, their eyes burning with feverish light. The flagellants. They march in a long line down the muddy road, flanked by torches that sputter in the wind. Each man carries a whip tipped with iron. They move slowly but relentlessly, chanting, striking, chanting again. Between verses, you can hear their breath, the sound of exhaustion dressed as faith. It began, historians say, around 1348, when the Black Death swept across Europe like a living shadow. The plague killed half of everything that breathed, and the survivors couldn't make sense of it. Priests offered no comfort. The church said it was God's wrath. The doctors said it was bad air. And so the people took matters into their own trembling hands. If suffering was the only language God still understood, then they would speak it fluently. You watch as a young man near the front falters, his whip falling from his hand. Two others lift him gently, whispering prayers as they carry him forward. There's no anger, just grim acceptance. Their blood paints the mud, mixing with ash and rain. Some carry banners showing Christ bleeding from the cross. Others wear hoods with slits cut for the eyes. It's devotion stripped raw, faith weaponized against despair. But not everyone saw holiness here. In some towns, the flagellants were greeted as prophets. In others, as disease bringers. The church, at first uncertain, grew nervous. By the time Pope Clement VI issued his bull in 1349 condemning the movement, the processions had already become riots, attacking priests, burning synagogues, spreading panic wherever they went. You follow the procession as it winds through a village square. The houses are shuttered, the streets empty. From behind one door, you hear a child crying. From another, the dry cough that marked the plague's arrival. The flagellants stop before the church. Its bell silent, its cross black with soot. Their leader, a tall man with a crown of thorns pressed into his scalp, raises his arms. The blood of men will cleanse the earth. He cries, only through pain will the world be healed. He brings the whip down once more, the sound cracking like thunder. The others follow. For a moment, It feels as if the very ground joins in, trembling beneath their fervor. And yet, standing there, you sense the hollowness behind it. The desperation of people who have run out of explanations. This isn't salvation, it's the sound of a civilization punishing itself for something it cannot understand. Later, centuries later, historians will argue about them. Were they fanatics, healers of collective grief, or just men broken by terror, trying to bleed out their guilt? Some suggest the flagellant processions spread more than faith, they spread the plague itself. Carrying death from town to town beneath banners of redemption. The chanting grows fainter now as they disappear into the fog, leaving only the slow drip of blood and rain. You walk toward the church they left behind. Its heavy door creaks open under your hand. Inside, the air is cold and still, thick with the smell of damp stone. A single candle burns near the altar, next to a bell rope hanging loose and silent. They say that when the church grim, the spirit of a sacrificed animal, guards a graveyard, the bells refuse to ring until its debt is paid. And tonight, the silence feels like a debt waiting to be collected. The church feels hollow, as if the air itself has been drained out of it. You stand beneath the bell tower, staring up at the rope swaying gently in the draft. Somewhere far above, the great bell looms in shadow, mute and watchful. The only sound is the faint drip of water from a crack in the roof. Then, a low growl. You turn, but the pews are empty. The growl comes again, soft, guttural, almost human. It seems to echo from the walls themselves. The church grim. In Old English folklore, before the first bell was rung in a new church, an animal, usually a black dog, sometimes a ram, was buried alive beneath the foundation. The belief was simple. In that grim medieval way, the creature's spirit would guard the churchyard from thieves and witches. It would watch over the graves and toll the bell when death approached. You look down and notice a patch of disturbed earth near the altar. The flagstones there are darker, damp, as though the ground sweats. Kneeling, you brush the dust aside. A bit of bone glints through the soil, too small for a human, too big for a rat. You whisper, "I'm sorry," though you're not sure to whom. The rope above gives a faint tremor. Then another. You step back as the bell groans. Once, twice. The sound deep and uneven, like a throat clearing after centuries of silence. Dust rains down from the rafters. In the doorway, something moves, a shape low to the ground. Four-legged, blacker than the shadows it crawls through. Its eyes gleam with the dull red of dying embers. It doesn't snarl, doesn't lunge, it just watches. Its fur ripples, more smoke than flesh. When it finally steps into the candlelight, you see that its paws leave no prints on the dusty floor. It tilts its head, as if curious. They said you ring the bell for the dead. You murmur, "Who are you tolling for tonight?" The creature's gaze drifts past you toward the altar. Following it, you see a shape slumped behind the pews, a flagellant's body. Torn and still bleeding, the man must have come here to pray, to beg forgiveness, and found something else instead. The bell tolls again, louder this time. You press your hands to your ears. But the sound isn't just noise, it's weight. It fills the air, pressing against your ribs, against your thoughts. The grim raises its head and howls, a long, mournful note that cuts through the ringing. Then, Silence. When you open your eyes, the dog is gone. The candle still burns, steady as ever. The bell rope hangs still. You walk toward the door, legs weak, breath shallow. The moonlight outside looks almost kind. You think of the animal buried here centuries ago, of all the others sacrificed to guard the living from what they feared most. The church grim wasn't a monster. It was a victim that learned to protect. But the echo of the bell lingers in your bones. Deep and heavy, it feels less like an ending and more like a warning. You step out into the graveyard. Mist drifts between the stones, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Beyond the wall, the first light of dawn is bleeding into the sky, painting the clouds in rose and ash. The night's stories, rats and revenants, saints and serpents, feel suddenly far away, like the tail end of a fever dream. And yet, as you stand there listening to the last sigh of the wind through the trees, you can't shake the feeling that the world has been whispering to you all along. Whispering that fear is memory. And memory never truly dies. You turn toward the eastern horizon. The bells fall silent. The mist brightens, golden at the edges. It's time to go back to where this began, among the painted bones and dancing shadows, to finish the story you started. Back to the bone dance, where dawn is waiting. The road curves gently downhill, and the mist begins to thin. What was once silver and cold now glows faintly gold as the sun edges over the horizon. You walk through the sleeping village, past shuttered windows and the smell of wet earth. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows, an ordinary sound, after a night full of anything but. You reach the square. The mural is still there. The dance of death. The skeletons, painted centuries ago, grin at you through a haze of soot and time. The king, the peasant, the monk, the merchant, they all whirled together, their bony hands forever locked in the same macabre waltz. The paint has faded, but the message hasn't. You step closer, the early light catching on flakes of gold leaf still clinging to the edges. For a long moment, you just stand there, listening. There's no music, yet you can almost hear it, the rhythm that pulsed through every story you've walked tonight. The piper's tune, the monk's chants, the beat of the flagellant's whips, the tolling of the church bell. Different instruments, same melody. Death's refrain. You think of the people who painted this wall after the plague. Their hands shaking, their minds half mad with grief. They weren't trying to frighten anyone. They were trying to remember, to make peace with something that refused to stay unseen. Every monster, every legend, every whisper of the dark was, in its own strange way, a kind of prayer, a plea for meaning. You trace the outline of one figure. A woman in a tattered gown dancing hand in hand with a skeleton wearing a crown of ivy. Beneath them, faint words carved into the plaster. Mors omnia ecit. Death makes all things equal. For the first time tonight, you smile. Because after everything you've seen, the curses, the saints, the demons, the desperate people who believed in both, you understand what the Middle Ages were really afraid of. Not monsters, not witches, not even the devil. They were afraid of being forgotten. And maybe, when they told these stories, they weren't just warning each other about the dark. They were keeping each other company in it. You take a slow breath. The dawn spreads across the rooftops, pale and pink, washing away the shadows. The mural seems softer now, almost gentle. The skeletons no longer leer, they simply wait. A warm breeze passes through the square, carrying the smell of bread baking somewhere nearby. Life returning, always returning. You close your eyes for a moment. The night's faces drift past behind your eyelids, the green children, the piper, Melusine, the black Madonna, the church grim, all of them fading back into the quiet where they belong. Their stories settle, layer by layer, like dust on old stone. When you open your eyes again, the light has changed. The square is bright, empty, peaceful. You whisper, barely loud enough to hear yourself. You can rest now. The mural doesn't move, but a single flake of gold drifts loose and catches the wind, spinning upward like a spark before disappearing into the light. The music in your mind slows. The rhythm softens, fading until it's just the beat of your own heart, steady, human, alive. You sink down onto the old stone bench and let the warmth of morning settle over you. The world, for all its ghosts, feels kind again. Your eyes grow heavy. The bells begin to ring in the distance, this time not for death, but for daybreak. Their sound is soft, almost like breathing. You let it lull you, the way a mother might hum her child to sleep. And as the light rises over the painted wall, the last of the darkness slips quietly away. End of script. Sweet dreams.